guys, today we're going to be talking about drawing animals and using our pictures for references rather than using our memory. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to try and draw an animal from memory, and today what I chose to do is a parrot. So a parrot is obviously a bird, and so when we start to do this, we usually, if we're drawing from memory, we kind of try and think of what we think their body looks like. So we might do something that looks like this, and then add some little feet to it. If we're trying to make a cartoon looking one, we might do something that looks more like this. And then we could add feathers and fill it in with more colors. Now, when we use our memory, our brain seems to simplify things down into basic shapes. So when we are going to try and draw something realistically, that can be kind of a challenge because our brain doesn't remember all of the details of what it looks like. This is where using a picture as a reference comes in. For the project that we're going to be doing today, because we're going to be trying to draw things realistically, we're going to start with a picture of the animal, and we're going to try and look for lines that we recognize so that we're able to draw the picture realistically. When we get started doing this, we're going to look in our picture for lines that we recognize. We have learned about curved lines, straight lines, and zigzag lines. And we're going to look for those kind of lines in our picture. When you find a line that you recognize, that is a good place to start. Sometimes it also helps to trace over the line with your pencil. This will give you kind of an idea of where you're going to make the line and what it's going to be shaped like. Once you find a line that you recognize, you can start to draw it on your paper. After you've done the first line, you want to start to add on lines that connect to it. I see that this one comes back up, and so I'm going to do the same thing with mine. The next line I see comes up and over. And then it comes up and across the top of the beak. After that, a line that I see that connects is one that comes down from here and connects over, forming the bottom jaw. I keep looking for other lines and details that I recognize, and I continue to add to the drawing. Now I see it comes down here for his neck, and then it curves a little bit more downward. Then the feathers start to come in. I just drew this feather that I saw. Now I'm going to add on this little one and continue down for the rest of the body. Going back up to the top of the head, I'm going to have it come up a little bit for this little white section, and then it continues up and around the back of his head. When I hit the edge of my paper, I'm going to stop. I'm not going to try and squeeze everything in to make it fit. This will make my picture a little bit unique, and it also will be a cool composition because it will be touching two edges of my picture. Then I'm going to start to go in and add other details. So other things that I notice are this outline that kind of outlines this lighter area of his face. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to add that onto mine as well. And then I, of course, see his little eye that is right down here. And I'm going to pay attention to what his eye actually looks like. So I see a dark ring, and then I see a light ring, and then I see another darker circle inside of that. Now I'm going to look at my picture and I'm going to see if there are other details that I need to outline. So one thing that I notice is this dark shadow. And then there are some lines on his face that I could also add if I wanted to. After you've added the details that you would like to add to your picture, the next thing you're going to be doing is looking at your pictures and comparing things that you like about them and things that you think you could maybe change. It's good to be critical of your own work. One thing that I noticed that I would like to change is I want to make his beak be a little bit smaller on the bottom side. After you've made any changes that you want to make, you can start to add a background. It's up to you what kind of a background you want, and this is a cool way to personalize your picture. So rather than using the exact same background from your picture, you could add something of your own. For example, I might want to add maybe a background that has a lake, and then maybe there are some trees off in the distance that we can kind of see the outline of. Once you have added your details, it's time to start to outline. We're only going to outline areas that have distinct edges. So for example, right here we see a distinct edge between the black and the white. But down here it kind of blends together. So we don't necessarily need to outline that. We can do that with paint. We're going to outline with a permanent marker, and I'd prefer that you use the skinny markers that look like this. Alright friends, once you are done with that step, it's time to start to watercolor. When we get to watercoloring, you're going to have a set to share with your table as well as a water cup. When we are painting, it's important that we use a brush that is the appropriate size. If you think it's too big, you can always switch to a smaller brush. It's important to use the tip of your brush when we are watercoloring. We are only going to get wet the colors that we are going to use at each time. For right now, I know I'm going to use some orange for his beak, so I'm going to only get the orange wet. When I start to watercolor, I'm going to start by using the tip of my brush. By using the tip of your brush, you can really keep your watercolor in the lines, just like you would with any other material, such as pen or marker or pencil, colored pencils or crayons. You can also use whichever colors you would like. You can make your animal be realistic colored, or you can make it be a little bit out of your imagination. So for example, on my picture, my parrot had a black beak, but I'm going to give it an orange beak because I kind of like the idea of making it look like a red bird with an orange beak. Now, I've painted this part, and one thing that we need to know about watercolor is that when you use watercolor, the water that you use acts like a road for the paint. So if I use some water right here next to it, this orange paint's going to spread out into that area. That's called bleeding, and in this case, I don't want this area to be orange, so I'm not going to paint it right now. I'm going to wait until my orange paint has dried before I move on to anything that is touching it. Instead, I'm going to move to the body, and I'm going to start to paint up around his head and the rest of his feathers. I know this will be safe because it is not touching the orange of his beak. Again, I continue to use the tip of my brush, and I paint very, very carefully. As I get down around his neck, we're going to practice something that is called blending. So earlier I talked to you about how water is kind of like a road for the watercolor. And so the paint is going to go wherever that water gets put down. So for example, if I start putting some water down right here, and it touches that red, you can see that it's going to fill it in, right? When that happens on accident, like I said, we call it bleeding. But you can also use that to do what we call blending. And blending is when you make something, some colors mix on purpose rather than on accident. So blending and bleeding are kind of similar, except for one we do on purpose and one happens on accident. When I get down here, I kind of want his feathers to transition from red to orange and then yellow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my orange paint, and I'm going to start to add that down here where I've also got some red coming in. We only blend the colors on our paper, and every time that we go back to the paint palette, we're going to put our brush in our water to clear it off. I add in some more red, and now you're going to see that the red and the orange is going to start to blend together. The third color I said I wanted to use was yellow. And if you use the color wheel in the back of our room, you're going to be able to find colors that blend really well together. So colors that are next door to each other are going to blend really, really well. But colors that are across the color wheel from each other are not going to blend very well. So if you look at the color wheel, you'll notice that yellow is next to orange and green. So if I was going to do another color on here, green would be a good next choice. But yellow is across from purple. So if I mix yellow and purple, it's going to make kind of a brown color. Now that I've painted that area, I don't want to touch anything that is next door to it. So I'm not going to paint down here, I'm not going to paint here where it would be touching. So I might need to stop and take a break from this until it dries off. And that's okay if you get to that point. If you do get to that point, you can put your project in the drying rack and wait to continue finishing it next time. Watercolor dries pretty fast, so if it's early in class, you can check on it in about 10 minutes and we can see if it's dry enough to continue working on. Once you've learned this step, you can use it to draw any kind of animal or any other object that you can see in a picture.